Okay, we'll get started. This is Brett Condon from One EDI Source, and thanks everybody for the strong turnout this afternoon for the educational webinar where we'll discuss what questions you don't want the business to stop asking you. As I said, my name is Brett Condon. I'm the marketing manager at One EDI Source. I will be moderating the discussion today. And from a housekeeping standpoint, you can go ahead and submit questions throughout the webinar through the chat feature. We'll go ahead and compile those questions and cover them at the end of the webinar session and make sure that we get everything answered. If we don't, then we'll follow up with you individually. With us this afternoon to provide some industry insight is Chris Manchin. CIO, Chief Information Officer of One EDI Source. To share some of Chris's background, Chris spent a number of years in the consumer packaged goods space, leading technology teams. With his leadership background and EDI expertise, he then joined the executive team at One EDI Source as CIO about 10 years ago. Recently a finalist for a CIO of the Year award, Chris has worked on many customer implementations as well as numerous internal projects, and it'll be my job to pull a lot of wisdom out of Chris in the next 30 minutes. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Happy to join you, Brett, and I hope to share some helpful insights today.
All right, well, let's jump into it. So according to a recent Gartner survey of CFOs, only 28% of CFOs believe that their organizations consistently benefit from their IT investment. That's a pretty frustrating statistic for many of us to hear. Is it the technology, is it users, is it change management processes? There's many factors to be considered, but we'll focus on engaging business users in EDI-related processes today in our webinar titled 4 Critical Questions You Shouldn't Give Up Asking Your CIO. So the first question that we'll hit today, how can technology help us be more agile to business changes? Chris, can you help us with that?
Well, first of all, we need to figure out what business changes. So are we talking about new customers, new markets, maybe new products, or even new customer requirements? And then what agility is needed? Are we talking about rapidly onboarding new customers and launching new products? And, are we talking about the trend we see where the business departments are actually pushing new technology on the IT department instead of the other way around as it is traditionally?
So given those things, what should our participants be doing to be more agile?
Well, let's see. There's 3 suggestions. Avoid technology that limits optionality. Optionality meaning flexibility in the future. This isn't always part of the decision criteria, but it really should be. With medium to large projects or investments, in the EDI space, when you add new customers, new products, or attack new markets, you may take on new customer requirements and need to handle those in order to support the business. You don't want someone else controlling the timing. Maintain flexibility. Most businesses want to be able to differentiate themselves, and this differentiation causes unique business requirements. Some EDI solutions tend to be limiting, almost like being in a box, and not everyone works well in the box. A previous company I worked with had an issue. If they forgot to include a tracking number on their shipping notices back to their customers, they would be fined $250 for each occurrence. For the shipping personnel, this was a manual process of keying in a 20-digit number. The business trained their shipping people, and the problem went away, or so they thought. Because their business was seasonal, they constantly had new people coming into the shipping department. The new people felt it was slowing down their shipping performance, so they stopped entering it, thinking that made them faster at their job. Because of the long order-to-cash cycle, it would take accounting over 120 days to even begin seeing the issue. And by the time they figured out what was going on, it would end up costing the business tens of thousands of dollars. Another company had a much more elegant solution, a more flexible solution, you would say. Their EDI system was more robust and allowed for business rules to be checked before the documents were sent to customers. The shipping manager and accounting team would receive an alert if the tracking number was missing within minutes of it happening. Ultimately, this solution improved customer satisfaction, allowed them to be more agile, and saved the business thousands of dollars in potential fines. So moving on to a second point on agility, plan how far into the future your key applications need to carry you. Is it 2 years? Is it 7 years? The Gartner Pace Layer model is a great framework for informing such plans. Applications that manage financials or EDI, the backbone of the business, should be in place for 7 to 10 years, but not forever. And point solutions you use to differentiate yourself, applications that allow you to innovate and add value to your operations are going to have a shorter life cycle, let's say 2 to 3 years. So something like a marketing system needs to be refreshed more quickly because the world is evolving rapidly in this area when you look at things like social. Also, analytics tools that can be quickly deployed and have a quick impact on the business and let you stay ahead of the competitors. And then number 3, think about making sure you have the ability to change deployment models, on-premise or SaaS solutions. Infrastructure is expensive to maintain and update, so don't lock down your thinking into on-premise only. Less and less people host their own email these days because, the ROI and the core competencies just don't make sense.
Got it. Thanks, Chris. I think those are 3 really strong points that can really help organizations stay agile with an eye towards the future. Optionality / flexibility, categorizing your applications. Not all applications are sort of made equal, right? And looking for different deployment models so that we can spend resources wisely. So why does all this stuff matter?
Business growth and change moves fast, and senior management, they always assume that enabling teams such as finance and operations, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out a way to support the evolution of the business, but figuring it out doesn't always happen automatically. When it comes to technology that connects you to your customers, having the right solutions can make all the difference in ensuring that growth is not constrained by operations. Or just as important, that the customer experience is not negatively impacted by your growth.
Thanks, Chris. I think we can all share the goal of not wanting to be the folks that slow growth down. So let's go ahead and move on to our next question, which is, why can't our ERP help us effectively manage customer satisfaction metrics?
Well, to address this, let's first break down the customer base. You have customers that you do business with manually. You have customers that you do business electronically, most often through EDI. For both of these, we need to capture adequate information off with which we can measure our performance. For this discussion, we're focused on those customers with whom we have automated our interactions through technologies such as EDI. So, 2 ways you can help better measure customer satisfaction. Recognize that the days of the do everything ERP are over. Why are SaaS businesses and their applications growing so rapidly? It's because they're doing what they do well, and they integrate with ERPs as point solutions. Stop trying to get your ERP through endless customization to do everything, and look to point solutions, whether SaaS or even on-premise, to help. If we take suppliers, for example, and relate this to customer fulfillment metrics supported by EDI, the common assumption is that all key customer data makes it into the ERP. And then the ERP can help us understand how we're doing with customer satisfaction. And this assumption is blatantly false. The EDI system is filtering out a lot of the data. And depending on your implementation, it could be a lot of key customer data. You may have key information like compliance with customer shipping dates that your fulfillment team never sees today. Fix this by giving more visibility into the key customer data at its point of origin.
But for companies that have like a strong skill set to support their ERP, they've got their individual that knows Oracle really well, their SAP person. Why not take advantage of that? Fewer people tend to know how to manipulate EDI data.
In that case, you're determining the technology choice based on your internal capability, as opposed to selecting the optimal solution. Taking that approach is what can drive the statistic that you quoted about CFOs not consistently seeing benefit from their IT investment.
Point taken. So the next question that we want the business to keep pushing us on is, just because it's automated, why can't we see it? First, let me define what we're talking about here. If we take folks in finance and customer service, for example, the information that business users want to see from EDI trading partners, things like order volumes and trends, how much and when, order fulfillment issues. If users can't find the information in the ERP, it goes into an IT ticket, how can we help them?
Well, first, you'd be surprised as to who has given up ever seeing data like this. It's sales and customer support, the customer-facing roles that really can improve performance if this information is at their fingertips. But unfortunately, they can't access it in most businesses. For the business conducted through automated means like EDI, things like order volumes, trends, products, etc., may not be presented in the ERP in a meaningful way, if at all.
Why not?
Well, as data is mapped into an ERP, ERPs only have so many fields. And that depends on what level of customization you've added. Different fields may mean different things to different trading partners in the ERP, and only a subset of that data is ever mapped, so it loses its structure. So let me share some examples. Let's compare two companies in the consumer packaged goods space, Target and Walmart. Each of these companies send dates on their purchase orders to let the supplier know when they expect the goods to ship. Target sends 3 dates, a ship no later than, a delivery requested, and a cancel if not delivered by. Walmart sends 3 different dates, ship not before, ship not later, and do not deliver after. Your ERP package might have only 2 dates, a ship date and a cancel date. When you integrate EDI, who's making the decision about where each date goes? Do you even have an option? Who is telling your shipping folks the subtle differences between the dates? What happens when a new shipping employee comes onto the company? How is management even measuring success against customer expectations in this scenario? And then another example is pricing. It's an area where people really struggle. When purchase orders flow into an ERP package, many systems will flag orders where the pricing doesn't match. That's great. But what happens from this point is where it gets interesting. The best-in-class companies will stop that order, review the pricing directly with the customer, and correct any discrepancies before they cause problems when accounting tries to collect. Some companies, though, they just assume their internal pricing is the correct pricing, and they override the customer's price. This is almost always guaranteed to cause slow pay of invoices, write-offs, and just pain for the accounting team. If management isn't measuring this outside the ERP package, they won't know the problem exists. There's lots of other examples like this, but in summary, if you're using the data in your ERP to calculate metrics, you're most certainly missing out on large amounts of information.
Okay, so why do people in finance, customer support, sales, why do they need the information that we're talking about in terms of EDI data? Again, isn't the information, at least the end results that sit in the ERP, isn't that enough for them?
By bringing these teams together and getting them engaged in the process, they can help identify opportunities to generate more revenue, improve negotiations, improve just overall customer satisfaction. Going back to the CFO survey you quoted at the beginning, the area where CFOs feel there were most room for improvement from technology is for facilitating analysis and decision making. There's important information in EDI that folks need to be looking at for EDI customers and vendors.
That's a great point. So to go back to the question, if a process is automated with EDI, should that mean that the business user visibility into that process will be more limited?
No, automation does not mean you should lose visibility. However, since for many businesses, their implementation of EDI has meant that, users now assume that they can't have visibility to key processes because of automation. The order-to-cash process in many companies is completely invisible to most people. Can I see the original order? What if it's an EDI order? Do I have to go through IT to do that? Did the ASN go out? I can't. It's hard for users to know sometimes.
Okay, so what's your advice?
Change the expectations for your business users. All the key data in the order-to-cash process is sitting in that EDI system, ready to be consumed. Purchase orders, acknowledgments, invoices, ship notices. There's people in the business who want to see that stuff. Give it to them. They are trying to solve problems, and without it, it just can't work. Don't let emails to IT and IT tickets be the solution. Your team is too valuable to be looking up things like that. You need your team's time on value-added projects. But present the information in a meaningful way. If it's a purchase order, present it to your users as what a regular purchase order, paper-based purchase order looks like. EDI data is too scary, but if they can view it in a meaningful way, people love it.
Great advice. Thanks, Chris. So let's hit question number 4. Who is being alerted when problems happen?
Some integrations are internal systems. Others connect us to customers. Integration points that connect our operations to our customer operations are the concern here. Business users want to be alerted to customer integration issues, but are too often left out of the loop. Integration issues become collection issues because root causes are not addressed. Examples are invoices not being paid or not being paid on time, slow pay or no pay, or even partial pay. Your business users need to look into these issues so that they can correct it for the future. And then the other common one that you see is messages are coming back from customers informing the IT department typically, or the EDI users, of operational issues, but too many times they're not making it to the right people, the people that understand what's going on and can make adjustments in the process for the future. So, 3 steps you need to take. Automate business alerts. Define business rules, alerts, types, and delivery mechanisms, dashboards, emails, etc., to inform your key stakeholders. Avoid the escalating threshold problem that I see. Businesses started 10 years ago with it. If it was less than $25, they would write it off. Well, that's escalating to $50, $75, $100, and more. The ostrich approach perpetuates the problem. Don't be one of those people. So monitor your write-offs. Categorize them so you can understand what areas of the business need to be focused on. And monitor your success. As you address issues, you'll see your write-offs decrease. If you're alerting the proper users effectively.
Excellent. I think if we can impact write-offs, that's an impact right to the bottom line. So I think that's a great thing. So Chris, you've given us all a good deal to think about and some specifics to take away, which is great. Let's look at some questions now. So we've gotten a couple of questions submitted while we're going here. If anybody has questions they would like to submit, go ahead and use the chat feature within Join Me to submit those questions, and we'll get those in front of Chris. Obviously, you can follow up afterwards as well with any of us to address questions offline. First question: who in the business should have ownership over EDI? Kind of accountability, if you will, in terms of where it sits organizationally. What's our recommendation there?
We see it in 3 areas. Sometimes it's in operations, other times it's in IT, but I think it works best when it's in the finance department. The finance department usually sees the issues in terms of slow pay and write-offs and chargebacks and fines. So they're best equipped to fix those solutions or fix those problems as they happen. So I would recommend the finance department.
Got it. Second question, and I'm quoting here. So it says, we process a lot of transactions. How do you avoid inundating business users with alerts? So I think that's coming from a place where they maybe they have some, if they automate some stuff, there's concern that folks are going to get 30, 40 emails in a day, and when you get inundated with emails like that, they tend to not get addressed just as much as not getting an email. So any recommendations around that?
Yeah, information overload can be a real problem. And too many times I see customer service departments and shipping departments that just have alerts and alerts and alerts, and they just all begin to get ignored because there's too many to deal with. So that's where things like dashboards and scorecards, so that you can compare your progress month over month, quarter over quarter, and see if those alerts are decreasing over time and see where the business requires focus.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. I think we'll wrap up here. Doesn't look like we have any other questions submitted. So we'll wrap up the webinar. As technology leaders, we need to be pushing the business ahead. But we also need to continue to encourage the business to push us. And that's what this session was about, making sure that our business users feel open in terms of pushing us and making sure we respond so they continue to do so. Visit our website to learn more about how one EDI source can help transform your business-to-business exchanges with our solutions for visibility, access, metrics, alerting, all the topics today. Thank you, Chris, for your time and your wisdom, advice on these topics, and to all of you that were able to join us today. Thanks, everybody.